1,000 square kilometers, there are 22 wine regions. It's delimited in the wine law of Hungary since a long time. But the first wine law, which refers to the actual territory of Hungary, was legislated in 1920. And in that law, which was sometimes amended, there were already 20 wine regions mentioned, and later on 2 others were created. As you can see, Tokaj is in the far northeastern part of the country, close to the border or just having a common border with Slovakia, and also not far from Ukraine. In Hungary, the surface area of vineyards is 65,000 hectares. It means that we belong in this region, I mean in the center of Europe, to the medium-sized surface area possessing countries. Austria has less, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia less surface area, Romania more, Ukraine more, and Slovakia also less. We have, as you can see, 7 neighbors. In each neighboring country, the winemaking tradition is very important, and we also are among them. The annual wine production, of course, depending in Europe or in the center of Europe of weather conditions, but in Hungary it's 3.5 million hectoliters. If the conditions are optimal, in that case it can go up to 4.4 to 3 million hectoliters, but 2 years ago we had only 2.9 million hectoliters. One should know that about 20 years ago the surface area in Hungary was more than 90,000 hectares. It was the so-called mass productions era, when Hungary was a communist country and was part of the Eastern Bloc and in charge of supplying the non-producing countries with wine. So Hungary was the #1 exporter to East Germany and Poland, and also very huge quantity to Russia. Tokaj is the gem, of course, of the Hungarian winemaking at the moment, and it has always been a very important producing area. As you can see on this beautiful photo, which shows the town of Tokaj, and I think a few of them, or at least one person among the participants can have memories of this town, is located where 2 rivers, the Tisza, which here can be seen, is the wider one, and the Bodrog, which enters into the Tisza. The Tisza River actually crosses Hungary and enters to Serbia, and then continues on the border with Romania and Bulgaria, and entering to the Black Sea. It's very important the role of these rivers, because when it's about the Tokaj Asszú, which needs botrytization, I mean the botrytization of the grapes, the humidity plays a very important role in October and November period in Tokaj. In foreign countries or abroad generally, Tokaj or Tokai is sometimes not understood quite well. So the name Tokaj is the name of a town, what we saw in the previous photo, and also the wine region is called Tokaj wine region. However, on the labels of the wines, you can see Tokaj, Tokaj Asu or Tokaj Samorodni or anything, which in the Hungarian language means that it comes from Tokaj or Asu of Tokaj. For example, I live in Budapest. I am Budapesti. It means I'm from Budapest. So when you see Tokaj Asu, it means that it's an adjective coming from Tokaj. It has a role, for example, when it's about a single variety like Furmint, and you say Tokaj Furmint, Furmint from Tokaj, because in Hungary, Furmint is produced in many other countries. For example, Egri Furmint, Somlói Furmint. The E at the end of the word means coming from somewhere. I have to make also a mention that the name Tokaj with other spelling is known in two other countries, in Italy, where a wine, Tokaj, T-O-C-A-I, was produced for centuries. And also in Alsace, there is the Alsace, the Tokaj, or Tokaj de Alsace, which is T-O-K-A-Y. These two denominations disappeared when Hungary entered into the European Union in 2004, and the law of the EU banned to these two countries to go on using as a denomination on their label. In Italy, it's the Tokaj is produced in Friuli and is made of a grape which is named Tokaj, T-O-K-I-A-I. And in Alsace, the Tokaj, Alsace, Tokaj de Alsace is a Pinot Grigio, which cannot be more or go on, cannot be produced anymore. I cannot be named or anymore. They go on producing these wines, but cannot use on the label the Tokaj denomination. In South Africa, however, they also produce a wine which is Tokaj, T-O-K-A-Y, and they can use that name on the label because they are not member of the European Union. In the case of South Africa, it's also an aromatic wine. The Tokaj wine region has a surface of about 6,000 hectares in Hungary. And I have to mention that in the other side of the border, what you see a town, the northernmost town on this small map, it's Sátoraljaújhely, actually where I was born, a very lovely town with 20,000 inhabitants and 765 years since its foundation. And on the other side, there are officially 156 hectares of vineyards, where if the wine is produced according to the Hungarian law, it can be also labeled as Tokaj wine. Of course, it's mentioned here that 27 villages, and in the surroundings of these villages, vineyards are planted traditionally. The map above is more than 200 years old, and in that map, it's also already indicated where the vineyards are planted. The annual yield in Tokaj, as I mentioned, depending also on the weather conditions, which vary year by year, and there are important differences between the yields, but the average, the annual average is between 35 to 40,000 tons of white grape, because in that region only white grapes can be planted and grown for commercialization. Recently, there are permissions, special permissions given to some producers to plant other grapes, including red one, like Pinot Noir, for example, to plant and grow and even to vinify, but these wines cannot be labeled as wines of Tokaj. So sometimes they put the name of the mountain, which is Zemplen, Z-E-M-P-L-E-N, Zempleni, I already explained the E, Zempleni Pinot Noir or Zempleni Chardonnay. I have to comment that I have already tasted excellent Chardonnay made in the Tokaj wine region, but the Tokaj name is strictly reserved for the traditional wines. These are some historical figures, I mean historical dates or years, which always are mentioned when somebody has a presentation about Tokaj. I don't want to go into details, but it's important to mention that that the first founding in a historical document for mentioning the Asu as a special wine of Tokaj was in 1571. And also, we are very proud that earlier than in Bordeaux, the delimitation of the wine growing area happened in Tokaj thanks to a royal decree. I mean, at that time, Hungary belonged to the Habsburg Empire, but it was an independent kingdom. And in 1737, it was declared as a closed area, and the vineyards were mentioned and named. As far as the recent history is concerned, it's very important that in 2002, Tokaj entered to the prestigious group of those sites with World Heritage declaration by the UNESCO. And also I put it here that in 2017 there was a new regulation on product specification made in Tokaj, which now allows to producers not to mention on the label the number of puttonyos. I shall later on speak about puttony, which is a measure of the botrytized grapes used for making Tokaj wines, and it's an indication of the sugar content of the wine itself. So if you find in the coming years or already a bottle of Tokaj Asu, which is labeled as Tokaj Asu without mentioning how many puttonyos it is, it's you don't have to have dubious or doubt about the authenticity of that wine. It now depends on the producers if one would like or would not like to mention it. However, the law stipulates that if there is no mention on the number of puttony, in that case, the minimum sugar content should be 120 grams per liter. In Tokaj, 6 grape varieties are allowed to grow. The number 1 is Furmint. It represents about 67 to 70% of all grape varieties planted in Tokaj. The second is the Hárslevelű, pronounced in Hungarian. It's an aromatic variety, or semi-aromatic, let's say. The percentage is about 22, and the Sárga Muskotáj, which is Muscat Lunel, is about 5, and only the rest is Zeta, Kabar, and Kövérszőlő. These are the Zeta is a hybrid created not more than 40 years ago, and the 2 others, Kabar and Kövérszőlő, has a much longer tradition. Well, when I spoke about the 2 rivers at the beginning of this presentation, now if you see the upper photo on the right side of this slide, you can see the clouds which cover the vineyards in autumn time. And these clouds, the humidity comes come from the 2 rivers. The highest point in the Tokaj region where vineyards are planted is no more than 400-450 meters, but the average height is about 300, 270, 300. So we cannot speak about mountains, but hills with slopes not so high and not so direct. As these 3 photos show, the colors in Tokaj also vary very markedly depending on the season. My preference is, of course, is the month of October, when dozens of beautiful colors amaze the tourists, or simply if somebody is passing by car in the roads, which are now in much better conditions than 10 or 20 years ago, which is a great help. One is very happy to see so many colorful landscape. Speaking about the Tokaj wines, it's important when we mention the terroir, the cellars. In each cellar, a special mold is formed as a result of the evaporation from the barrels of the wine, and this mold contributes to the special flavor of the wine itself. This mold covers the bottles. If one is lucky enough to visit Tokaj and go to a cellar of a small producer or a renowned and larger producer, always can find these bottles in the right corner of the photo, which are covered sometimes 1 or 2 centimeter size depth of the mold. And when you touch it, it's like a fur from the most precious animals. It's a beautiful to see them, of course, when you are there, but also when you are explained how it contributes to the special flavors of the Tokaj wine. So Cladosporium cellare is always an obligatory question when young sommeliers come to pass the first exam at our association. They have to know how this mold is called in Latin, in the original Latin name. When speaking about the soil, it's a volcanic region. I mean, Tokaj is a volcanic region. Recently, there was a very good book published by Mr. John Szabo, a Canadian guy of Hungarian origin. I mean, he was born in Hungary and left for Canada, about the volcanic wine regions of the world. And he included in that book a few regions from Hungary as well, and dedicated the major size or volume of his writing to the Tokaj wine region. These stones can be found in every lot of the vineyards in Tokaj, but not the same ones. You can see the variety of these stones, which geographically, of course, it is determined in what zone of the region, what kind of that those stones can be found. And when you visit wineries, even when you are an ordinary wine tourist, the producers or the public relations lady or young man always has in her or his hand a few of these stones that you could touch it and observe them. And these are the base soil, and which are covered by loess and also the chernozem, which is a very good material for agricultural production in Central Europe. As I mentioned, autumn is everywhere in Europe, I mean in the northern hemisphere of harvest time. As you can see in the coming photos as well, these vineyards, or in these vineyards, some kind of machinery is used. The distance between the rows already indicates that. However, harvesting is almost completely done by hand. Of course, with the exception of some wineries which don't produce so-called high-quality wine and harvest the grape for making ordinary table wines, which are sold in Hungarian supermarkets for $3 to $5 per bottle. use machinery for harvesting as well. But those wineries which are renowned and take care of their prestige make harvesting only by hand with workers employed temporarily on those periods. This is the puttony. It's not easy to explain now to some curious wine lover what puttony is by words, but if this photo is shown, everybody can understand what it means. This was some kind of instrument used during harvest time by the workers to collect the handily picked up bunches, and in this cask they transported the grape to the cellar. The capacity of this cask is 25 kilos. So they had to make a day hundreds of tons from the vineyard to the collecting point, where there was a much bigger cask, or directly to the cellar if it was a smaller winery. In this puttony, the name of this cask is puttony. As I see, bunches for the Samorodni wine are collected, because the bunches contain both very healthy berries and also some botrytized and shriveled berries as well. As I mentioned a few seconds ago, everything in the vineyard at harvest time is done manually. As my friends in Tokaj comment to me, recently they can hardly find young people who are willing to go and work in harvest time in the vineyards. First of all, because there is a limit they can pay them daily. It's not a small sum. In our standard, we can speak about 30 euros per day, but simply as they say, younger generation is lazier than the previous one. So they are begging that these old ladies, and they say that these old ladies, the majority are already widows, because in that region, the men who drank during the whole lifetime not always live longer ages. So I just simply asked my friend last time when I was there, it was the average age of the women employed in winter time, in harvest time, and they said that more than 65. And who knows what the solution will be in 20, 30 years to make harvest by workers. And as you see, the man on the shoulder with the puttony is neither from the young generation. So the future of Tokaj from this respect will be very, very interesting. And also the general manager of the Oremus winery, which belongs to the Vega Sicilia group, said to me that it is not a simple job. So these women are practicing it for more than 20, 30, 40 years. And to learn how to behave in the vineyards, to have enough caution, enough attention, and to know some techniques to make the harvest, and even more to pick the shriveled and botrytized berries, it takes time. So it's not such as somebody goes there that I would like to work in the vineyard as a collector, who previously never had such kind of experience, is not capable to do that. This is a traditional cellar entrance, or an architecture, kind of architecture which one can find in many villages, or the surrounding of many villages in the Tokaj region. And also, as in one of the photos previously shown, you can see the barrels and the walls covered with the mold, Cadosporium cellae. This is a very interesting illustration, and I was very happy that my friends at the Füleki winery, Hajnalka is a very kind manager of that winery, and I consulted her what to include in my presentation, and she sent me this image. What you can see very well that the stage of ripeness of the berry, and also for what purpose that berry can be used. As you see on the upper line, the first one, dry, is used to craft ordinary Tokaj wines, which any ordinary Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Gruner Veltliner is made. And of course, depending of the vintage, that ordinary wine can be semi-sweet, semi-dry, dry, and even it can be sweet if, and it is not called neither Samorodni nor Asu, if the sugar content is less than 18 grams per liter. When the berry begins ripening, it's used for late harvest wines. Late harvest like in any other country. And if you see the second, third, fourth, and fifth berry, these are used for late harvest wine. Then comes the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th berries. These are partially or almost completely shriveled, and they are used for making the Samorodni wine. The Samorodni wine is made of bunches which contain healthy, I mean the dry berries, and partially or almost completely shriveled, and to some extent botrytized berries as well. It means the vinification of a Samorodni is similar to the vinification of any white wine traditionally, but the raw material of this wine are not bunches containing only dry and well in good condition, well harvested berries, but it's a mixture. And when it's written there that the last two ones Asu berries, it means that for making the base paste for the Asu wine, later I shall explain it, it's made only of botrytized, shriveled and botrytized dry berries. This is very important to know, that the Asu wine is made of the so-called Asu berries, which are picked one by one. And in a vineyard, it happens that the ladies we saw previously make several walking around in 2 months. One day they go, they pick the Asu berries, they return the second day, they return 1 week later, and they always find in the bunch new healthy Asu berries. And as you see in this photo, you see the bunches, and the bunches contain different stage, I mean berries with different stage of ripeness, and also the process of botrytization is going on. And for example, in the middle, if you see the bunch in the middle of the photo, a collector of the Asu berries can pick at least 20-25 pieces for the Asu winemaking, which will be soon seen when I shall show later on the Asu making process. I included this photo because the Füleki winery, which is a very up-to-date modern building for vinification, and also an old reconstructed palace which serves as a guest house and also offering wine tasting for tourists, is an example of many new entrepreneurs who come to the wine region, invest in buying vineyards and construct buildings, because it's a good sign that they see future, bright future for the Tokaj wines. And just to show that this is not a single case in Tokaj, if one has time enough to visit the region and spend there 4, 5 or 6 days, and can go around, can visit dozens of this kind of wineries. And this is the latest list, I mean the official list of the wines which, according to the law, can be produced in Tokaj. Of course, the most important one is, I mean, symbolically, is the essentia, which is made of the free-run juice of the Asu berries. You saw 2 or 3 slides before the Asu berries. And when these berries are collected in a cask, on the bottom of this cask, one can open a small tap, and the juice runs on its own, I mean, the berries on its own weight press that juice. It's a very thick liquid which contains between let's say 500 to 800 grams per liter of sugar, and the alcohol content is no more than 2 to 4 grades per liter. It's some kind of specialty. It's like a syrup. It's very tasty and very expensive. A bottle, it's even not bottled in half-liter size, but 0.25 liter can cost between 200 to 600 euros at least. The second wine is the Asu. I shall talk about it later on or soon. The Samorodni in dry and sweet version is the wine I also mentioned, which is made of grapes or bunches, which contain healthy and also botrytized grapes. The fifth and the sixth is in Hungarian pronunciation is fordítás and máslás. I don't explain it because it's only left in the law due to respect to traditions, because very few producers make it, and it has no importance as far as the participation in the total quantity of wines made in Tokaj are concerned. As I said also, the late harvest wines are made of berries which are well ripened, and I also mentioned the ordinary wines of Tokaj, which are on the bottom of the list of the wines. And this is what is the most important, and at the end of this presentation, I give some sentences about it. The Tokaj Asu is a wine which has been producing during centuries. It was always considered as a unique wine. As you can see, the labels come from the last century or the century before last. You can find these wines at auctions, even nowadays, depending, for example, the 1927 bottle, last time it was sold for 800 euros at an auction. In London, the Christie's every year includes a few in their lot, in its lot, and it's not only for collectors, because these wines can be drunken and enjoyed. The 1901 bottle, I had the luck to taste a sip, because in 2000, when it was the turn of the millennium, in Tokaj, there was a tasting organized for special invited guests, including Hugh Johnson as well. And we could taste 10 bottles, one bottle from each decade. And 1901 represented the decade between 19 to 1910. And it was the comment of everybody at the table that if we had not known that it's a 100 years old wine, we probably would have said that maybe 20 or 30 years old, and still it was fresh from the point of view of feeling acidity. It was not a concentration of sugar, but it was a real wine which pleased the palate. This is also a compulsory reading, as I was told by my friends, that the Tokaj Asu wine reached many countries in Europe, in the previous centuries, and served as an inspiration for famous writers or philosophers or any high prestige personalities. And the inspiration meant that not only they could drink or they drank this wine, but they made also mention. I like to call the attention of a poem of Nobel Prize winner Pablo Neruda, the Chilean poet. The title is the Tokaj, and it's a beautiful poem. It has also an English translation. Of course, he wrote it in Spanish, but it has an English translation. And I think it's one of the most beautiful literary work which praises the Tokaj wines. Music composers also commented or wrote in their memoirs. Then when I wrote, for example, in case of Schubert, it's mentioned even on the notes first published that the composition was inspired by a glass of Tokaj wine. And it is a unique phenomena is that the Tokaj is mentioned in the national anthem of Hungary. Not any other country in the world intonates wine on solemn occasions. And I already mentioned that the indication of sugar content on the label is a very special one because the puttonyos refers to it. And now the selected berries can be seen. These are the berries collected in the vineyards decades ago or during centuries. These berries were also taken in the puttony from the vineyard to the place where vinification began. And as I mentioned, this is a tank. This is not a barrel. On the bottom of the tank, if you open the tap, then the gold drops begin coming out, and that's the nectar. And if somebody can taste freshly that nectar, it's something special. I'm fortunate, or I feel myself a lucky man, because usually I spend a few days in harvest time in Tokaj, and I can taste the essentia, the nectar, at different places. I can comment that the essentia, I think, is among the few kind of wines, of special wines, when you cannot find too much difference from which winery it comes, because it's so dense and so vividly the botrytization characters can be felt that it's not easy to say from which vintage or from which spot the berries come. This is a photo, a closer taken photo, but calls the attention that these are in very good condition, the botrytized berries. They are dry, that's why they can be used for vinification, not like the berries molded on the vineyards when the weather is rainy, several weeks are needed with sunshine that harvest could be effected in the vineyards. And as you can see, if you collect in the region, it's regulated that no more than 2 tons of shriveled and or botrytized grapes can be collected in 1 hectare, and from 2 tons only 6%, it gives only 6% juice content. That somehow explains the price.
Dr. József, sorry to interrupt, but you have
yes,
you have 5 minutes to.
It's okay. I have only a few slides more.
Great.
I think it's almost finishing.
Thank you.
This is what I wanted to show you, that if you are interested in, of course, on internet searching for information, you can find a more detailed description of how an asu is crafted. But when we speak about Tokaj asu of 3 puttonyos, it means, it indicates 90 grams per liter of sugar content, and it comes that 75 kilos of berries for 1 unit. I speak also in 1 unit. 3 puttony is 3 times 25 kilos berries. This forms some kind of paste. Even the producers press it very slightly, and to that quantity 126 liters of wine, I mean new wine, made in September from healthy grapes, is added, and that mixture begins fermenting and gives the asu. And in the case of a 6 puttonyos asu, the requirement is that it must contain at least 150 grams per liter. This is what I said. You can see there some definition of the Tokaj asu. According to the latest regulation, now only 18 months are required for barrel aging, but the wine should stay, I mean, in 3 years before commerce putting it in on the market. So the vintage 19 first can be launched on the 1st of January of 2022. You can see the minimum alcohol content, minimum sugar content of the asu. If it's not mentioned on the label how many puttonyos it is. And the last 3 slides, these are the authorized bottle shape for the dry wines in Tokaj. It means if the quality of the wine meets the requirements, can or should be bottled in this bottle shape. And this is the compulsory shape of the asu. It is 0.5 liter. Traditionally, I mean for centuries, it has been used, and it must be bottled in this kind of shape. There is also the possibility, in case of asu as well, to bottle it in 0.25 liter if it's for special occasions. for example, for selling in duty-free shops in Budapest, you can buy Asu bottled in half size of this bottle. I call the attention of all my friends who will be so lucky and happy that can come to Hungary and visit Tokaj, that a new museum of the Tokaj wine, official name is World Heritage Wine Museum of Tokaj, has been constructed and inaugurated 2 years ago. And it's a great experience to visit it, to learn a lot, not only about Tokaj, but the other World Heritage sites in connection with wine and wine. And this is the landscape of the old cellars, history of Tokaj, fortresses and palaces, beautiful scenery, having the possibility to taste a glass of Essentia, which is in my hand. And if anybody has a special question, anything what I can help, please contact me. I promise to answer within a very reasonable time, I mean a few days. And if somebody can come to Tokaj, I'm pleased to organize them visits and asking for courtesy from my friends that the impression will be even more than usually and probably more than imagined before having been there. So thank you for your attention and also thank you for the Füleki Winery for the help offered to me to make and edit this presentation. Thank you.
Super. It was very, very clear, and it's actually like really bringing us to Hungary, actually looking on the presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. József. Couple of questions.
It was my pleasure, of course. Right. And any question, and it's time for answering questions, yes. With pleasure.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions. There is a question from Togu was asking that, is that outside Tokaj, is there any region can produce Tokaji? And if it is, what is the name of the wine? Is that possible?
Yes. In Hungary, there are at least 2 or 3 wine regions where the conditions are given for the botrytization of the berries. And the grape varieties in these regions also are capable to produce on the bunch berries shriveled or botrytized. However, they cannot use the denomination Asu. So, if you go to, for example, a wine region in the western part of Hungary, north of Lake Balaton, you can drink late harvest wines like Asu. Okay. Also, another wine region also in the western part of Hungary, which has a grape variety called Ezer Jó, can give excellent wines, which are practically Asu, made not of the traditional grape varieties of Tokaj, but of different ones. But the name Asu is reserved for Tokaj.
Okay. So they can make Tokaj, but cannot make Tokaj Asu, even though the environment is allowed them to.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is the simplified explanation.
Oh, yeah. All right. So is there any natural still red wine produced in Hungary, and what grape that they are using, and which region that produce this kind of wine?
I mean natural sweet red ones?
Yeah, natural still red wine.
Natural still, not sweet.
Still red wine.
Well, we are very proud of at least 3 wine regions, Eger, Villain, and Sexard, where red wines of the highest quality are produced, mainly of the so-called universal grape varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Pinot Noir, partly, Pinot Noir not as much, but the so-called Bordeaux blend is made in all these regions, and a special wine which is named Bull's Blood, Bikavér, in the wine region of Eger. And the producers in Hungary easily can sell the high quality wines for, not exaggerating, 60, 70, 80, even 100 euros per bottle. They have no problem of selling these wines because they are really very good ones. Of course, limited quantities produced because the purchasing power in Hungary not so high. But in Budapest, we have several Michelin star restaurants, and all of them offer these wines for the clients.
Do Hungarian wineries also do the organic and biodynamic practice?
More and more. Recently, several of them simply left behind the previous interventions and techniques, and they declare themselves organic winemaking, what they do. Not all of them who practice this kind of grape growing and winemaking has a certificate, because they say that it's a process, sometimes doesn't worthwhile waiting for the approval. But we have also producers with the so-called Demeter certification. They participate in competitions. Now I can say that at least 60 to 80 producers don't use anything in the vineyard, and also I mean artificial ingredients or materials, and even more limit the intervention in the cellars. But as I mentioned, in Montpellier, where the challenge biomillésime international competition is organized year by year, and it's the most important occasion to present samples of this kind of wines. Unfortunately, never a Hungarian producer sent a bottle, which because they require the certificate. That's why I cannot say that we are in the forefront of eco wine production.
All right. So there's a question about Tokaj Essentia, but I believe it's already explained, yeah, Corey, I believe through the presentation itself. Dr. József already mentioned about the Essentia, and yes, it's still produced.
What I can add is, or maybe repeat only one sentence, that one should try, at least it is served in a small spoon, even it is not served from glass. And there are two wineries in Tokaj which designed a special spoon for offering it, and it's sold in a box which contains the bottle. The bottle even is 0.175 liter, or 0.250 liters, no more, and the spoon is added. And it is a very, very special taste. Once in lifetime, if one is a fanatic of specialties and curiosities, should try. Not easy access to this wine because it's not exported in large quantities, but it can be ordered or maybe bought. In London, there are several small shops where one can buy it.
All right. Next question for Severin. What does Hungarian oak barrel adds to the wine?
One more?
What does Hungarian oak barrel adds to the wine?
Yeah. Well, in the last 20 years, more and more wineries abroad use oaks or barrels made of Hungarian oak. The two major cooperages in Hungary belong to two great, large and important foreign chain. In one owner is from France, the other from the United States. And these barrels, barrels made of Hungarian oak, can be found without exaggeration everywhere in the world. If you visit in Chile, I have personal experience, 20 wineries, at least at 18, there will be Hungarian oak. If you visit in the United States wineries, in every second winery, there will be Hungarian oak. It happened to me in New York State, in Finger Lakes area, that in a group, we visited a winery, and they explained that we use barrels of French oak, American oak, and Eastern European oak. And I put my hand and said that, excuse me, Eastern Europe is a region where there are several countries. Can you tell me from which country that oaks come? And she was a lady. And she said, no, but wait a minute, I will check it. And she went out, came back and said, oh, from Hungary. Because the two major suppliers of oak is Hungary and is the so-called Slavonian oak, which now is a territory in Croatia. So in South Africa, in Australia, everywhere Hungarian oak is used, but I must add that everywhere the participation in the mixture of the wines, the wine aged in Hungarian oak is no more than 10–15%. So it will never dominate, but it has its special character, which has added value as far as the flavors are and the tannins are concerned. So when you check also a fact sheet of any Chilean great wine, you will see that aged in French oak 50%, American oak 40%, Hungarian oak 10%. And I know many friends at these cooperages in Hungary, and they are very satisfied because the selling goes very well. In the last 10 years, year by year, more and more Hungarian barrels are sold. Barrels made in Hungary and also barrels made outside Hungary, but of wood imported
from Hungary. But for the making of the Tokaj, they only using the Hungarian oak barrel, like
90%.
Okay.
90% of the producers, we Hungarians are very nationalistic. Our sometimes chauvinistic feelings are poisoning the mentality of us. I mean, I'm in favor of so-called healthy nationalism, and I quarrel a lot with friends in Tokaj because 99% uses only Hungarian oak. The so-called Gönci barrel or oak, I mean trees cut for cooperage in that region. But I have tasted Tokaj dry Furmint wines, which were aged partly in French oak, sometimes in American oak, and they are different. So I can agree that a Tokaj Asu would never be taken in foreign barrel. But in a case of like this bottle of the Füleki winery, which is an ordinary white wine, I mean a dry Furmin, it also uses French oak. Tokaj Asu and Tokaj Samorodni, the two major specialties, I am in favor also of, if not banning, but not recommending the use of foreign oak. But in other wines, why not?
All right. So, but the thing is, if I'm not mistaken, seeing on your presentation, in the production of the Asu, you are using the oak barrel for 18-month minimum, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It is the previously it was 24 months. Even previously it was 36 months. But there is a pressure on the legislative in Hungary, mainly of the large companies in Tokaj, which has foreign participation, are insisting that for financial necessities, they always wanted to launch the wine earlier on the market. To have the wines for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in the cellar, it's a cost some. And I have also to be frank that their lobbying, not pressure, I say lobbying to lower the aging period, and what I indicated there that from 2017 only expired.
All right. I think we have to have the last question, looking at the time, 6:40 now in Bali. So there's the last question is about, it was mentioned about the mold in the cellar. How does the mold affect to the wine? And does it have the connection with the temperature of the bottle or in the barrel?
The mold has, of course, no direct contact with the wine. So the mold is formed by the respiration of the wine. That's why in many of the cellars in Tokaj, if you visit the old cellars, the old barrels, you can see that the barrel is not tapped, or sometimes there is only a glass tap very loosely put on it. So there is evaporation, and that evaporation forms the mold. And that mold has an interaction from the wall with the wood. The barrel also respirates. And then when respirates, it means that receives an air which is already affected by the mold. On the bottle, it's the minimum effect on the wine, or almost nothing. The mold has effect or influences the so-called microclimate of the cellar. If you put a barrel in a cellar constructed of concrete, which is 100% sterile, And if you put a barrel with the same wine in a cellar of Tokaj, and after 1 year you compare the same wine in same wine aged in the two cellars, one can feel the difference in favor of the wine aged in a barrel in a Tokaj cellar. And it's very important. It's very important to say that many times producers who went to Tokaj to consult colleagues have taken mold from the cellar, asked permission, and have taken that mold, for example, to a cellar in Italy. And in Italy, that cellar has not grown anymore. It stopped spreading. In Tokaj, if you put that kind of mold in a new cellar, in 1 year it spread, even if only a few millimeters, but it spread, covering the wall. In other regions, it stops functioning.
I see. So it must be something in the air.
Yes, yes, definitely,
only.
definitely, and probably from the wood.
Oh,
I mean,
yes,
the barrel crafted of wood from Tokaj or the Tokaj region probably has also an influence on the formation of mold.
All right. So last but not least, Hungary is also produce sparkling wine, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
What method that they are using? They're using traditional method or Kermang method, and what is the region of the best sparkling wine in Hungary?
Well, in Tokaj, the law allows the production of sparkling wine. Most of the sparkling wines are made using the champagne, the traditional method. I think almost without exception. I have tasted a few Tokaj sparkling wines. I'm not sure that the Furmin grape is ideal for sparkling crafting. Of course, they cannot use other grape variety, so that's why I can comment that why not to try a Tokaj sparkling. But one must be prepared not to receive the same experience as a good quality sparkling made of Chardonnay. However, we have a wine region. The name is Somlo, S-O-M-L-O, where there is a winery which employed a French champagne master a few years ago. They produce sparkling wine, method traditionnel, excellent quality. They are now enlarging the capacity of the champagne house. It's beautiful. You should check it. Is I spelled the name of the winery. It's Kreinbacher, Kreinbacher, Kreinbacher. It's a fantastic Hungarian champagne. And I have to mention, and I'm happy that you asked for it, we have a champagne house founded in 1872. The name is Törlei, and it produces more than 60% of all champagne, including method traditionnel, Charmat, Doux, sweet ones. They represent almost 60 or 70% of all the champagne sold in Hungary. Good quality, but if somebody is accustomed to a quality represented by an original champagne from the Champagne region, of any producer. This is not that kind of quality, but we are happy that it's ours in any case.
All right then. I think we need to close the session. Did anybody want to ask something? I think I can, if anybody, I see Harald was raising hand. Harald, you want to say something? I mean, it's now, it's still a fasting month, and couple of the participants left because they need to break fasting month after the break fasting the whole day, but couple is still here. So I see, no, Harald, I see you're raising your hand. You want to say something or not? All right. Did anybody want to say anything to Dr. József?
I see the smiles of my dear friends, so I'm happy. I'm happy even if they are silent. I see Yasuko, Lily, all, Mr. Park.
True.
So I have a question, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yes, of course.
So the most important grape variety in Tokaj is Furmint.
Yes.
And my question is, do you produce with this grape variety more sweet wines, including azu, or more dry wines?
Furmint, if we consider the total quantity of wines, probably dry, because the ordinary Tokaj white wines made of Furmint are dry or semi-dry. The only, let's say, I don't know the figures, but probably no more than 20 to 30% of all Furmint grapes harvested in a vintage are used for Asu and Samorodni. In the Tokaj region, of course, people are more accustomed to consume their own sweet wine or semi-sweet wines. But in Hungary, like in many other countries, the demand for sweet wine is not so high, and the producers must take it into consideration. For example, if you must remember the Oremus company exports in volume much more dry, the so-called the famous mandolas, all over the world than other sweet wines, and the mandolas is dry Furmint. And if I remember, even in the Grand Tokaj, which is the only state-owned company in Tokaj, the majority, it's absolutely true, of the wine they produce, all kind of wines, beginning from table wines of €2.50 per bottle price, are dry.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. So we really need to close the session, guys. Once again, thank you so much for everybody to join. Special thank you, very honored, Dr. József, to have your presentation. It was, see, from everybody is giving a very applause. Thank you for the insight and detail about Tokaj. So it's really a new and additional knowledge for us. So once again, thank you so much for everybody, and special thank you to Dr. József. Just to remind you all, next session will be next Thursday. So next Thursday will be 3 o'clock, 3 p.m. Bali time. So we will have Jason Willis from WACT. So wow. Yeah, Jason will talk about leveling up the spirit testing, and also talking about the new certification of spirit in WACT. So there's something interesting also for us to catch up, not only about the wine. We talk a little bit about spirit as well. So next Thursday, I will send the invitation. And also I'm recording this session. And after that, I will send all of you the recording video as well as the presentation, if Dr. József is allow us to have the presentation.
Of course.
yeah, to send to all of you for your further study, and you can review back the session. So if everybody want to take a picture of the session, you may open the video so everybody can see your face, or we can taking a video. Okay, so we can see all of your face. This is like a group picture. Cecil, Tubi. Oh, nice. All right.
Okay. It comes to my mind that if somebody is interested in the poem of Pablo Neruda, please ask Lily, because she has the translation into English.
Ah, nice.
I need it.
Okay.
I need it absolutely.
All right.
Okay, and also you can ask for Yasuko-chan for some good essentia.
All right.
Wow.
Love to share
She
that
has
with
already
From
tasted.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Professor
No, it's
Joseph.
look here.
Oh my God.
Okay.
So
everybody.
if we meet next time, we should share this Fuleki bottle 6 foot tonnage.
Oh, nice.
Wonderful.
So we should have it in Korea then, yeah, Mr. Park.
Yes.
I want to drink this.
So I will reserve it for you.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Please,
Okay.
please.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure to see you.
Thank
And
you.
let us meet the earliest when the situation allows.
All right. Or maybe even we can arrange Sommelier goes to Hungary. Togu will be happy with that.
Yeah.
Of
Yes.
course.
Come in,
No
ma'am.
doubt.
Igen.
Great.
Again.
All right then. I close the session, guys. Thank you so much once again. Big applause to.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Senyum Sepen.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye bye.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Hawk.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.